If you spend any amount of time working on yourself or doing shadow work or therapy, these kinds of things, you've probably come across the phrase or idea that you're doing some kind of healing, like I'm healing this wound or I'm healing that or something. And I myself have I have a hard time with that conceptualization of this process because to me the implication is that I'm broken and need to be fixed. And so it made me resist some modalities because of their choice of language. And today I'm going to tell you about a reframe that I've got for that helped me get over that and has made doing what I do a lot more fun. So stay with me and I'll tell you about the reframe after the bump. Hi, it's Chris here at Pleasurable Living, where we talk about things I've tried to make living more pleasurable and that I hope will help you too in some way. Today I want to talk about this reframe I had, as I mentioned in the intro, that I've done a lot of this kind of work and I'm constantly coming across the notion that this is healing work and that I'm working myself as healing this wound or healing that wound or something like that. This idea used to trigger me somewhat. I think the problem was that the implication, as I said, was that I'm broken somehow, or there's something wrong with me that needs to be fixed. Because I think, well, if you're healing something like a broken leg, it's a broken leg or a broken liver or whatever it is. I can't help shaking the feeling that when you talk about healing, that there's something, the assumption is there's something wrong to begin with. And I reject that notion. And it's kind of interesting that a lot of schools and modalities that I've explored, while they use that language, at the same time they insist, well, there's something wrong with you and you're not broken, right? And I'm like, well, then why do I need healing if there's nothing wrong with me? So that contradiction also made it very difficult for me to take some of that in. Now, more recently, especially as I've continued to do these kinds of things, I've shifted in some ways to the way I look at what I do. And circling was actually instrumental in this, which as I've said before, I can't say enough good things about, circling, at least as I know it from the Circling Institute. And I'll drop a link in the comments if you're interested in that. I came to see that certain things like my responses in situations, are often tied to conditioning that I have. I've spoken before in an earlier piece I did about the value of rehearsal in helping to shift conditioning. This is the beginning of a noticing of things that the way I've started to think about this, instead of healing, is I think of it as re-education. I think of myself as having simply, as a child, been fed a lot of misinformation about the world. A lot of the triggers and pain tapes that I have, that's a phrase that Deer Tribe use, are misinformation that I was fed by parents or caregivers or unfortunate situations where I got the wrong idea about how things work. And that what I'm doing right now is, I prefer not to call it healing, but I get why people do. But what I'm doing is I'm re-educating myself. I discovered that, this thing that I learned to do, or this practice that I adopted unconsciously because I didn't know any better and didn't have other models to compare with, is actually destructive or not helpful, and I would rather do something else. And that's kind of the idea introduced in the rehearsal video that I mentioned. And that with those, what it is, well, if that didn't work, as I said in the rehearsal video, what do I wish I'd done instead? So then this quest began for me of what would I like to learn to have a better life? What would help me do that? And so I've taken a lot of programs and workshops, and I'm not going to list them all here, but I will talk about them piecemeal in other videos as I continue on this channel, right? And again, circling was one of them, for example. That I see circling is actually a great example because this is a how to relate to others, right? Even if you look at the messaging on the Circling Institute's website, and I'm not an employee of theirs or anything, the messaging is very much about how to create connection. Literally describes it that way. It's like you want to learn how to create connection. That tipped me off to the idea that what I'm really needing to do is to relearn how to be with other people and a variety of other things as well. That, again, I was fed misinformation, by accident or whatever. I'm not assigning malice or anything like that to that, but the point is I took in a bunch of misinformation. And my goal is to re-educate myself about the way things really are, and then live according to that rather than according to the way I thought they were. That also takes away the broken thing. It's not that I was broken. It's just that I was presented or exposed to misinformation. And it feels good to know that I can relearn or learn alternatives to what I knew. So that's my frame, that I think it actually introduces an element of fun, because I may finish some course and what would I like to improve on next, or how could I get better at this? I can have a practice group. There's things like that I've done, like again with circling, but other places as well. I just use that example because it's an easy one to relate to, and I don't have to keep explaining the many different things. But keep watching the channel. You'll hear about more of them. I'll talk about them, in due time. So I'm curious what you folks think about that reframe. Are you on a healing journey? Does it sound more or less appealing to be re-educating yourself? What do you think of that? Drop a note in the comments and let me know how that sounds to you. So that's what I had for this piece. Like and subscribe to help out the channel. I really appreciate it if you do. And I'll talk to you next time.